Turquoise is so heavily identified with the Southwest that we tend to think that it is important here because it contrasts so beautifully with our red rock formations. But the reason that turquoise is so important in the region, it is beautiful. It is the color, it can be the color of a beautiful summer sky. And it does indeed stand in wonderful contrast to the primary colors that we think of as being Southwestern. But turquoise means so much more. Turquoise, for the people, the indigenous people in the region, really means every aspect of a full and happy life. For example, this is a necklace that was designed to be worn by a baby, and it was made in either Santo Domingo or Cochiti. And it's actually not a very pretty little necklace. It uses blue plastic for most of the beads. The shell beads in between have not been carefully worked. But although most of the blue that we see is not real, they've been very careful to include some pieces of real turquoise. And that's because turquoise has a protective ability. If you put your child in turquoise, then that child is going to be protected against ill health, ill will, and just ill fortune. Navajo children are given the first piece of turquoise in the first few hours of their life. It's often a single piece of turquoise that's put around their wrist, maybe with a simple piece of cord. In this case, we have a tiny little bracelet that was designed to be worn by a child who's certainly less than 1 year old. You can just imagine it on a little chubby arm. And the bracelet is attached in the back so that the child can't pull it off. It's not a beautiful bracelet, but it's a bracelet that would keep your child in good condition and protect it. Here's a bracelet that was designed for a slightly older child. You can see that the circumference is bigger, but it's still far too small for an adult to wear. And the reason, again, that you give your children turquoise is to make them look more attractive, certainly, but more importantly, to protect them. From about 500 AD, we have the first examples in southern Arizona of shell bivalves that are covered in whole or in part by turquoise mosaic. We have spiny oyster that has been covered with turquoise mosaic, and then we have mother of pearl and jet. And these are often worn as pendants, and you can see that this one is strung actually very simply on hand-spun cordage. Here's a more recent example. And in this case, they've surrounded the shell, again spondylus, spiny oyster, with silver. And it's meant to be worn, you can see, as a more sophisticated pendant. You would probably combine this with a bead necklace or perhaps even a silver bead necklace. How wonderful to think that this is just the latest in many, many centuries of people combining turquoise and shell and then wearing them together. Even where it's not really obvious, we see that combination of shell and turquoise. And here is a necklace that dates to probably about 1930, 1940, probably also made at Santo Domingo. And you can see that it's strung on a double shell hishi. And then it has these little pendants. What you probably don't see at first glance is that each of these pendants is a piece of shell. They're covered with turquoise and finished with a piece of jet. Remember that in an arid region, water is vitally important. There is no life without water. And the water is indicated here by the origin of the shell and by the color of the turquoise. So you have the extra water and water together. Sometimes it's perhaps more obvious. This is a Zuni frog fetish. Frogs, of course, are animals very associated with water. And in this case, the fetish is made entirely out of a piece of turquoise. if you look at his wonderful red eyes, he's got coral beads for eyes. Coral comes from water, double water imagery, triple water imagery with the color of the turquoise. Now, I've talked a lot about water, and of course, as I've said over and over, water is very important in this region, but so is the sky. And here we have a wonderful Navajo-made silver box with zuni inlay on it. And the inlay is of a character that we often call the Rainbow Man. For obvious reasons, he's bent like a rainbow. A rainbow, of course, for many people is a symbol of good life, either because he symbolizes rain in the atmosphere if you're in a dry region, or symbolizes the end of rain if you're in a very wet region. In this case, the inlay is made with a few pieces of jet, that's the black, and then everything else is either turquoise or shell. Take a look at this little stepped image on the hat of the Rainbow Man. That's a cloud. Rainbows are water images, but they're also sky images. And in fact, for the Zuni, turquoise means the sky stone. So in sum, turquoise for the people in the region means protection. It means protection from want and having enough to eat, and even greater water and sky, which together give you productivity and plenty.